Welcome to Patty's Place, a place where we will talk about grief, dementia, and caregiving. I named this podcast Patty in honor of my mom who passed away from dementia about 2 years ago. I'm your host, Lisa, so I wanted to create a place where people know that they are not alone when they are going through all of these difficult times. So grab your cup of tea, your cup of coffee, or if you're having a really bad day, a glass of wine, and let's get going and talking about our guest today. Our guest today is Victoria Volk. She is a certified grief specialist. You're also an author. You're a creator and podcast host of Grieving Voices. You're a Reiki master and a certified biofield tuning practitioner and a UMAP certification coach and end-of-life doula. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm very excited. There's so many things to talk about with you. So let's start with, what is an end-of-life doula?
An end-of-life doula is the person that bridges the gap between the caregiver and the care team and the individual who is receiving hospice care or, the patient.
So you come in towards the end, or how does that work?
Well, so in an instance like where someone is in hospice, I'll use that as the example. Oftentimes people enter hospice at the very end, but what people don't understand or realize maybe is that you can actually be on hospice even a year before you get close to passing.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either, because when my mom had hospice and at the time, my dad and I weren't sure if she would be ready for it, but they told us that they can be accepted into 6 months up to 2 years or longer for hospice.
Yes, I think the misinformation is that you have to be like close to actively dying before you are on hospice, and that's not the case.
No, it's not, and they are just I cannot talk more highly enough for hospice. They are just wonderful for everything that they do for it. So then, an end-of-life doula would kind of come in and help the actual patient with it?
They're the advocate for the patient first and foremost.
Okay.
But then also can bridge the gap between, the family and their questions and things like that when the care team is unavailable, or to explain things maybe in a different way. But more so than anything, it's to bring understanding to what is happening, to be an advocate for the patient as far as their wishes. Really, my training actually, so my father actually passed away of cancer when I was a child, and he passed away in a nursing home.
Okay.
This was, late 80s. Hospice wasn't what it is today, and resources, very rural community as well. And so that, what the training enlightened me in is that it is possible to have like a dying wish, right? It's like your dying wishes. Like, do you want to be bathed when you die? Do you want your family to bathe you? Do you want soft lighting? What kind of music do you want to be playing? Who do you not want to see? So an end-of-life doula can also be a gatekeeper to visitors, because it would be difficult, right, for family to say, I'm sorry, but they do not wish to see you, right? It's a little bit easier for an end-of-life doula to be the advocate for the patient.
And then you create even more drama with that.
Right. So, like I said, they're like the buffer and the bridge and kind of all of those things.
I like how you said about the music, because I ended up being with my mom. I was with my mom all the time, but that last week I spent the night with her. She was in memory care, and pretty much almost every night I would play her favorite music. She had picked out the music she wanted for her service. I would play that, but then I also just played all the different music I knew she loved through the years, because I thought, well, I know she could still hear me and I would talk to her, but I thought she loved her music, so I thought that would give her peace too with it for that. I think that's really cool. Actually, when you were describing the end-of-life doula, I just remembered, I don't know if you ever watched the show The Pit on HBO.
I have not. I haven't yet.
They actually, in the season 2, a couple episodes ago, they had they portrayed it end of life doula with a woman who had had
Nice.
cancer. Yeah. So it was with that. So I think that is important to help, with the patient and the family at the time. What would you say is the definition of grief that most people likely have never heard before?
Grief is the loss of hopes, dreams, and expectations. It is
Mm-hmm.
anything that you wish would be or could be different, better, or more.
I like that definition because, yeah,
It's a lot of things.
it
It's a
is.
lot more than just about death.
Yeah, it's all those secondary losses and things like being able to pick up the phone and call that person or go shopping or anything, watch TV with them with that.
Or a loss of health,
Yeah.
or a dream,
Mm-hmm.
or finances,
Yeah.
moving,
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
job, different job, losing your job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot to it with that. So, what would you say is grief recovery?
Grief recovery is a method, an evidence-based method to recover from the emotional pain of loss of any kind.
Okay.
And so I'm a advanced certified grief recovery specialist,
Okay.
and that's kind of a mouthful, but the advanced part means is that I can work with individuals online.
Mm-hmm.
But with this method, we walk through a process that takes people through their most difficult relationships. Um, they don't have to be dead, right? Like
Yeah.
that's grief. No one has to die for us to grieve. So it can, and often my clients and even myself, I've worked through relationships with people living in my life because it's difficult to have the emotional honesty sometimes with people who, I mean, have you ever tried to have a deep emotional, be emotionally honest with someone who's unhealed in their own heart?
Yes. Yes.
It's very difficult,
It is
right?
very difficult. Yes.
Yeah, you probably get a lot of defensiveness or reactivity instead of responding, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really difficult to listen to hear. And so this work is really about sweeping your own doorstep. It's clearing the energetic muck that you are carrying around from
Mm-hmm.
the past, from your relationships, and through apologies and forgiveness and all of these emotional things that we hold on to that add layer upon layer to our grief. That's what we work through. And I had a client that went through the program with me, and she said, people say you have to do the work. This is the work. I know what it means now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really deep. It's not easy. It's, people are more apt to spend a couple grand on a vacation for a week than emotional freedom. And I get why.
Oh, yeah.
Truly,
Yeah.
I get why.
Yeah.
We resist the hard things. And the question I would pose to people is, you've already gone through the worst thing.
Mm-hmm.
What, it's the suffering can either take us down with it, or it can be a gateway to expansion and growth in our lives. And I'm not saying that we have to have loss in order to grow, but my life experience has taught me
Mm-hmm.
and the countless people I've talked to on my podcast over 5 years, and just people I've worked with, that when you get to the other side of that, through deep introspection and reflection and bringing those things to your awareness, you disarm it's almost like you are able to, you really essentially process the pain versus all the ways that we avoid it, distract ourselves and push it down. So that is the work. It's truly sitting with what's happened in the past so that it no longer dictates the present or your future.
And that probably helps you too when you know that you'll probably never maybe get an apology from a person or that, but yeah, you're able to work through your own feelings with it.
Right. And have you tried to forgive somebody who thought that they didn't do anything wrong? I mean,
Yeah.
if it's, I forgive you. Well, what did I do wrong?
Right.
Right. You're stuck in emotional jail. So
Right.
the beautiful thing about this work is you don't have to confront the
Mm-hmm.
other person. It really is an internal responsibility. It is the individual's responsibility. No one else can heal you. It is
That's very
the
true.
work of the individual.
And I tend to say that I think illness and death brings out the worst in people, because it is such an emotional experience. So all of those feelings come into play, the sadness, the anger. Like, you don't think about all that, but it does. And now you're dealing with all these people and stuff, and it's just very difficult to navigate.
And I would challenge that and say, but it doesn't have to.
No, it doesn't.
And that's the piece I want to bring to this conversation, is that it doesn't have to bring out the worst in you. It can actually bring out the compassion in you.
Mm-hmm.
It can bring out the potential in you. I carried 30 plus years of grief and trauma in my body and in my life that impacted how I parented my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Up until early 2019, when I went through grief recovery myself, and I was not the same person after that. That experience transformed me. And, I had a lot of anger in my body and rage that came out in a flood of tears. I didn't think I could cry anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you lose a parent as a child, when you're molested, when you have an emotionally unavailable living parent, it's going to change you.
Oh, for sure.
And it did, and not for a good way in my early 20s. And so I had a lot of work to do. But it took me 30 years to get to a place where I surrendered to the fact that I can't do this on my own, because I'm quite stubborn and I'm quite the skeptic.
Mm-hmm.
And I question a lot. But one of the things was I started to question. I asked myself bigger questions. How should I put this? When I started to ask myself the bigger questions, instead of turning those questions onto other people, and I started to ask myself those questions, that's when the ball started rolling for me in the area of personal development. Because I thought I was pretty screwed up. I thought, oh my gosh, like my life is meant to be just one of suffering. Like, is this all there is to life, is just to suffer? Like, is this why we're here? And that question, or that feeling, I guess I should say, along with all that anger and having another loss. It was actually my father's my father's brother, my uncle, who, when my father died, I also lost that entire side of the family. They were no longer in our lives. And there was this story that was passed down. And, I was the youngest of four. My brother was 5 years older. My sister was 9 years older than me. So I was essentially like an only child when all this happened, and kind of had to raise myself through it. But, my uncle was diagnosed with brain cancer, and I went to see him, having not seen him in 30 years since my father's funeral. And that was in the process of, I was in the editing phase of my book, and that really is what opened me up to the fact that grief is my issue here. And it actually took me another almost 2 years before I went to Google to find something to help me, because, like I said, I get the resistance. I get the, like I said, we've already gone through the hard stuff. Like, what do you have to lose? So, I'm so glad I did that, because everything I've accomplished, or everything I've done because of that, or after that, has been because I went through and just became emotionally complete with a lot of relationships that were causing a lot of suffering in my life.
I don't think people realize that grief does affect your body. A lot of people, they just think, oh, grief, you're sad. They just don't realize the levels of it and how it can be stored in your body, and how one loss can bring up other losses. So what do you say to those people who believe they don't have to dig up the past to heal?
Well, how is that working for you?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. How's
That's
that
what I
working?
ask. Like,
Yeah.
how are you?
Yeah.
How are you doing? Like, really? Like, because if you are projectile vomiting your emotional dis-ease over the people around you, okay, so it's manifesting in that way. If you're like a tea kettle, we are like tea kettles.
Hmm.
We either implode or we explode. So either you're having physical manifestations or you are outwardly expressing it with gambling, shopping, relationships, anger, pornography.
Hmm.
I mean, anything that makes you feel better for a short period of time. Even exercise can be a way that people cope. And yes, exercise is healthy, but is it, are you doing it to negate or avoid what's really going on emotionally?
Hmm.
So I think that, again, it comes back to asking ourselves those questions. We kind of live life on autopilot. I think sometimes we get in the motions of life, and we just do not ask ourselves the deeper questions.
Because it's hard.
It
It
is,
is hard to,
because once you know the answer, but
right.
it's like acknowledging it. Well, now you got to do something about it, and even not doing something about it is a choice.
Yeah, I think it makes me think of my mom because my mom had a lot of traumas in her life. She was sick as a child 3 times, and she lost her cousin when she was 11, and they were more like sisters. And this was back in the 50s where, nobody talked about it. And so she always felt she really had that survivor's guilt because people would look at her and then start crying for her cousin. So she almost felt like,
Mm.
and then she had other people through her life pass away. Both her parents, my grandparents, died young, and just she tended because I think what she did is she took a lot of her grief and she wanted to care for people. So she tended to, whether it was friends or coworkers or whatever, they tended to come to her. And she really tried to give people peace and healing. I think probably because she didn't feel that as a child when her cousin died. And that was just because that was the 50s. We just don't talk about it. We move forward, with it. So she tried to always, especially with illness and that, she really wanted people to feel some peace and to heal. And like she was there for people to talk about it. She was very open about talking about illness and things like that with it.
Sounds like she was a light worker in her own time.
She probably was, although she probably didn't know it. Yeah.
An empath, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. She felt things very, very deeply with that. And I think that's why, for me, she taught me a lot of that. She used to always say with people with cancer, it used to drive her crazy when people would say, they're just not fighting hard enough. They're giving up. And my mom
Mm.
would always say, people, their body gives out. They don't give up. There is a difference. They used to, she would get so angry about that. She's like, stop saying that. She would be like,
Well, and who's saying that, right? It's
right.
the families or the loved ones who cannot comprehend their life without that person.
Yes.
We are taught how to acquire things and people, not what to do when we lose them. And so I
Yes.
think that's the biggest reason why people resist going into hospice earlier, is because the family is in denial.
Yeah.
I don't think, I know, this was my training. The family is in denial of what is happening. And when you can get past your own emotional stuff and and come to, not, it's not even acceptance, but embracing what is happening
Mm-hmm.
with your loved one, that's when you can have deep and rich conversations. And you know we and at end of life, so many people spend so much wasted time talking about the logistics, like the bills, and
Mm-hmm.
you have all this, the stuff, the financial stuff that you have to address, and all. So look at all that wasted time. If all of that could be settled, and this is, estate planning people, like, and end of life doulas, we get this because it's kind of like we're partners in helping people understand that getting your affairs in order early is a gift to your family, to your loved ones,
It
to
it
yourself.
really is. I was very grateful that my parents did have the powers of attorney and all that, and they did it because of because of something that happened with one of our family members, and that made them go, "Oh, wait a minute." They didn't, and because I'm an only child, they're like, "We don't want you to be in this situation. We want to," and they told me all about it. I knew where everything was and stuff. So I was grateful for that. And I don't think too, circling back to hospice, I don't think people realize how much hospice does for the caregivers
Mm-hmm.
and how much they help and make it easier. Like I had no idea, that they were able to, like, they brought in the power recliner for my mom. They brought in the hospital bed. So many people think it's like, boom, it's right there when right before you're dying. And it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't take away their medicine. They make them comfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
it made it very easy for me and my dad because we knew what my mom's wishes were. Like when they, and it is hard. They're asking, do you want a DNR? Do you want a feeding tube and all this? And we were like, no, because we knew that's what she wanted uh, with it. I mean, it's a hard conversation, but I am grateful that my mom and my dad have had those conversations with me.
And in recognizing how important that is, because knowing that that was her wish, you had to accept that, right? You
Yes.
you were forced to accept that this was going to happen and this was going to be the process that was going to be followed, rather than, I can't see you go, I don't want to lose you, so let's do everything possible to keep you alive, regardless of, how you may feel about it, right? And I
Right.
think that's the importance of having those conversations, the hard conversations, right?
Yeah. And then it always comes back to that quantity of life versus quality of life. And and it is hard to look at it when you're in that situation, to be like, this is not a quality of life. This is not what this person would have want. Are they really living? And even with my mom's dementia, I could see how she progressed more and more and more. Where like she just, things that happened, I was like, oh,
Mhm.
she would never want, like the fact that, she was having accidents, like she would never have wanted that to happen. So in some ways I was glad that she didn't realize it, because that's just not what she would have done with it. And I think in hospice too, like I said, they bring in so many, there's like social workers and there's chaplains, and my mom, they brought in the music therapist for her and so many things. And then I had grief counseling available to me, even with the anticipatory grief. With that, it just, I wish
Resources.
yes, the
Mhm.
resources. I wish people would be able to do that more, but there's so much resistance from people
Mhm.
because it is hard. I didn't want my mom to die. I didn't want my mom to have dementia, but here we are
Mhm.
with it. So, what would you say is the one thing people need to know about grief?
No one escapes it.
That's very true.
And we all grieve at 100%. And no two people, you know, I was going to say no two people grieve the same, but that's not necessarily true, because there are myths of grief that we all actually kind of succumb to. And because it's when grief strikes, right, we resort to what we know.
Mm-hmm.
And what we know is what we learned by watching our parents,
Mm-hmm.
generally, the people in our environment, the caregivers and caretakers who shaped us. Because we learn 75% of how to by the age of 3, we've learned how to respond to life. By 75% of how to
Mm-hmm.
respond to life by age 3. The remaining comes by age 15.
Mm-hmm.
So by the age 15, we're pretty we've been shaped into how to respond to life. And for most people, I mean, it's starting to change now with, I think COVID helped to catapult a lot of these conversations. But um, again, we resort to what we know, and what we know and what we're taught is usually unhelpful and hurtful. So, when a child loses a pet,
Mm-hmm.
often that's one of the first losses for a child, is a pet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't worry. We can get another dog. We'll just replace the loss. Don't feel bad. We'll replace the loss. So one of the myths is don't feel bad. Another one is replace the loss. There's two. Or so then the child learns that, well, I can't talk about my dog or my, because my parent, you see the response in the parents, right? They don't know how to handle it. And so the child learns to grieve alone then. That's another myth, grieve alone.
Yeah.
And we all have heard the phrase, time heals all wounds, right?
Yeah.
That's another myth.
Right.
And we also know that many people tend to keep busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? To distract themselves. That's another myth. Keep busy.
Mm-hmm.
And another one, be strong.
Oh, I hate that one.
Gotta be strong.
Because I said that, I asked my grief counselor so many times, I'm like, what does that even mean, be strong? Like, I want to say, I guess I had a choice, but I really didn't have a choice. I'm like, what does it even mean? And people are like, oh, you're so strong. I'm like, okay. Like,
you can be strong or you can be human.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But these are the myths of grief. So when I wanted to say, like I was about to say, people grieve differently, but really we don't. Right. We all succumb to these myths of grief, that these are the things that we've learned. These are the patterns that repeat. Mm-hmm. This is the education we've received about grief. And so that's why I'm so passionate on the educational piece. And the grief recovery method is very much educational. Mm-hmm. I recommend anyone to pick up the book, The Grief Recovery Handbook. You will learn more about grief than you've ever learned.
Okay.
And that is the book that we use to facilitate the program, the grief recovery method. You can't do it alone. I tried. I did. I signed up for the training and I thought this is what's going to help me and I can help other people. And it was going to be a 5-hour drive and then it was canceled. And I thought, oh my goodness, and then it was like the universe asking me, how bad do you want this? So I signed up for the training in Austin, Texas, and I invested way more than I would have needed to. But I just felt like this was the answer for my heart and what I was looking for. And it truly ended up being that way. And, you got to follow the nudge. If something is nudging you and it keeps noodling at you, follow those breadcrumbs, and when that initial training was canceled, my husband said, you've taught yourself so many things. Just get the book, teach yourself. Like you don't need anyone to train you. Mm-hmm. And so I got the book and I read it, and I should have grabbed my copy because it's full of doggy ears and highlighting and Post-it notes. It's like we cannot heal on an island. And that's why on my podcast, Grieving Voices, it's me on an island with a megaphone. That's how you feel, right? That's how you feel.
Yeah.
And, you just want to scream out to the ether and you feel like you're alone.
Yeah.
But it is the one thing that unites us all. No one's escaping it.
No, we're not. And I typically am not like a support group type of person, but I do go to the hospice that my mom was with. They started a parent support group, and I look forward to it every month that I go to it because I don't feel so alone. So many things are so similar. All of our stories are different, but yet there's so many things and so many feelings. And I just feel for that hour and a half or that I do feel supported. And sometimes I don't even have to say anything, but sometimes I feel that comfort because it's like, you're not alone with it, and you also know that you have other people that understand how you're feeling and you can talk to them about it as well for that. On your website, I love this. It says, welcome friend from the fog of loss to clarity of peace. I love that saying with it.
Thank you.
And your website is theunleashedheart.com, correct?
Yes.
And I saw when I was on your website, I saw you have on here, it's called Unleashed Letters. What is that?
That's my newsletter.
Okay.
It's a bi-weekly newsletter.
Okay. With that. And then you also have something on there that's Spank Sessions? Spark. Sorry. I can't read my own writing.
Okay.
I can't read my own writing. Spark Sessions. What is that?
Spark Session is really, it's people who are a little bit maybe further along in their journey. They're kind of on the other side of the grief. And it's like, I've worked through all this stuff and there's something noodling at me that I really want to do. And I want to brainstorm with someone. I want some encouragement, or I need some insight. It's like I'm a co-creator with someone that is just looking for their spark.
Okay.
And I consider myself, if someone wants to be pushed off the metaphorical cliff to get something accomplished or to set out to do something, I can be the pusher. I tend to push people off cliffs.
Well, that's not always
figure
a
it out
bad.
on your way down. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
you're not going to have certainty, and embrace the uncertainty of life.
Well, that's not always a bad thing. You have a lot of meditations on your website too, I saw, that people
I
can
create meditations.
with that. And then your book is The Guided Heart: Moving Through Grief and Finding Spiritual Solace.
Yes.
So
that was before grief recovery.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I would write a very different book now.
Okay.
Because I actually mentioned the stages of grief, and there are no stages. It's I actually had Ken Ross, the son of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, whose work is so Ken Ross was on my podcast, and we talked about that actually, and her work was with people on hospice and terminal illness. I
didn't realize that either till I went to hospice, and they explained it that was actually, she wrote it as the stages of people who are dying, but somehow it just all became, oh, this is your stage of grief. And it's like, no.
Pop culture just ran with it.
Exactly.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Even The Simpsons.
Yeah. So why do you think boundaries are important while you're grieving?
Well, what I would say about boundaries, me personally, is I didn't know a boundary if it slapped me in the face.
Okay.
Most people wouldn't know a boundary if it slapped them in the face. And most people, when they're confronted with a boundary by someone else, they tend to get defensive and not like it. Right?
Yes.
And people who get defensive and not like the boundaries of other people probably don't have their own.
Oh, okay.
When we are, like, for me personally, my boundaries were basically non-existent because, I was violated as a child, and there was, no privacy. My privacy was violated in many different ways. And I didn't understand. I didn't know what boundaries were. Like, I wasn't taught what were boundaries. And I think that's how a lot of people are raised. We really don't understand how boundaries can provide safety. They can provide a sense of security within yourself and your body. They can also be walls, right? Like,
true.
They can be emotional walls that we build in order to keep ourselves on an island because of fear or uncertainty, right? Like, boundaries can be unhealthy. They very much can be, but I highly recommend the book Boundaries.
Okay.
Dr. Townsend, and there's another doctor. That's generally the book that I recommend for people to read after they've gone through grief recovery. It's excellent book on boundaries of all types, of all kinds of different boundaries. Did I answer your question? I feel like I didn't, but I kind of went on a tangent.
Oh, no, I think it is because I think boundaries are hard. I know I have a hard time, like, being able to, sometimes it's just like to say no and not feel guilty. The
people pleasing.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's important. And I think it is hard while you're grieving, or even when you're taking care of your loved one. Sometimes you have to, and then it can be very difficult, to be able to say, no, I can't do this, or no, I'm going to do this today. Or like they always, one of the things hospice, a lot of times we'll talk about that, to have your plan B, especially like during holidays or special occasions where those events can be really hard when your loved one's not there, and that it's okay if you tell someone, I'm going to drive myself, and if you leave earlier than expected, to be able to do that, because not everybody will understand that. But it can be hard to say, no, I'm going to do this. I'm trying to put boundaries up.
Well, and I think a big part of it too is, and this is, I'm navigating this in the last few years too, as I learn more about myself, the importance of informing people. Informing doesn't mean asking for permission.
That's true.
If you would say to someone, someone invites you to something, and you're not you can say, if you're not sure how you're going to feel, like the event's not for like 2 weeks. Well, I'm unsure today, but ask me 3 days before, a few days before, and I'll see how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's honest. You're not saying yes. You're not saying no. It gets closer to the event. They ask you again, and you can respond with however you're feeling. No, I'm really not feeling comfortable with going at this time. Or, you know, you know what, that sounds really nice to be out with people and things like that. I'll come, but I'm just going to make sure I drive myself, or, just know that I might leave early if I'm feeling like I need to rest. It's just being emotionally honest with compassion and with informing without asking for permission.
It is. And it sounds so easy, and yet
it does. I know. And then you have the dynamic too. Let's say it is your parent,
right,
and you are the caregiver. That's where boundaries can be really difficult, right?
Yes. Yes, because with that, and with my dad still now too. So yeah, it's that fine line you walk with it.
If you didn't have those things established growing up, it's like adulthood becomes the training ground. Crisis becomes the training ground often for people. And that's like the worst time, when everybody's emotionally amped up, right?
Right. Yeah, it is. It can be very, very difficult. And then also too, you learn how people handle crisis. I joke about myself, like, I'm one of those people that in the crisis, I'm fine. I am thinking 3 steps ahead. We need to do this, this, or this. But then, like, it could be weeks, months, whatever, later on, and something really simple, like my TV or the internet's not working, and I just completely fall apart. I'm just like, don't mess with that little stuff. The big stuff I handle. But, but then other people are different, where they completely fall apart in the middle when it's happening, and that can be hard.
It's like dying by a machete versus 1,000 paper cuts.
Right, yeah, and that's hard to navigate too, when you're with all this.
That was probably a very bad analogy, but it's,
right.
It's that, like, eventually the same result is going to happen, right?
It's exactly. Yeah.
Collapse.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I said. I can handle all that, but don't mess with my TV. I'm just like, I literally fall apart. I'm like, I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. But that's, but everybody's different, with that as well. And to circle back, when you were talking about pets and things like that too, I think it's important. And yeah, you can't replace the pet. Like, you can get another dog or cat, but that particular one that passed will always be in your heart, because they're all different. And they also can help with healing too. I think they're very therapeutic, those puppy dogs.
Oh, I replaced the loss when my youngest started kindergarten. I was actually closing my business I had at the time. That's when I started to blog and write and things like that. And I was, I had my identity wrapped up in being a parent and being a photographer at the time. And so, like, those things ending, I didn't know how to cope with that. And I thought, I need a dog. Like, I said to my husband, I think I need a dog. And I did all this, and I know now it was just like this. It was a way for me to distract myself, give me something else to focus on, and to feel better. So yeah, I replaced the loss.
Well,
and we still have him today. He's 12 years old, and he's a fantastic dog, because I, poured hours and hours into research and how to choose a dog and all this stuff. And I mean, there is no replacing him. He is like the perfect,
exactly,
and the perfect dog. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I always say the whole world can turn against you, but your dog will always be there for you. With it.
That's true. That's very true. And that's why it is a devastating loss. It is a loss of a family member, a companion. And I do have a program for that. It's on my website.
Yeah. So your website is theunleashedheart.com. And so you have many different programs that people can go to and work with you as well, correct?
I can meet you where you're at.
Okay.
A variety of different things. Lots of free stuff too.
Oh, free stuff is always good. We like that. So
ebooks. Yeah, there's a free energy quiz. There's a grief quiz. There's the grief quiz kind of matches you with where you're kind of at with the service I offer. Kind of as a matchmaker in that way. Like, where are you in your grief? But yeah, there's something for everybody there.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a very, I've learned a lot in this conversation. So I hope,
I'm glad. I really just want to leave people with the fact that suffering is sometimes of our own doing, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I just want people to understand that the worst has already happened, and to hold on to the hope that there can be the sun, regardless if we can see it or not, the sun is shining. Right?
It's very true. Yes, that's very true. Well, thank you so much. And we will have the website information on on our website as well too, so people can check out all of your services that they can work with you for. So
thank you so much for having me.
So hopefully you've enjoyed your cup of tea, your cup of coffee, or your glass of wine if it was a really bad day. And hopefully you've learned a lot today. And most importantly, you are not alone in all of this. And please join us for another episode of Patty's Place.